test of the K-4 nuclear-capable SLBM, that's a submarine-launched ballistic missile from the INS Arighaat. That's the news that's broken today. Of course, no official confirmations from the Indian government yet, but a big development that has a significant impact on India's nuclear triad, its ability to maintain a nuclear deterrent. And we've got Shiv Aroor in the studio, of course, our top hand on defense matters. Shiv, could you begin by breaking this down? This test, this K-4 nuclear-capable SLBM, what does it mean? What is an SLBM? What is a nuclear triad? Could you break it down for us?
Yeah, so Shashank, thanks for first of all for having me on ITG Global. You guys are doing a fabulous job in breaking down these complex stories. It's a very, very big day for India's strategic weapons program. I'll break it down. I'll break down what the nuclear triad means. But like you rightly pointed out, the K-4 is basically a ballistic missile that's launched from a submarine, which might sound simple enough, but it's a very, very technically complex kind of weapon. Unlike a missile launched from land or fired from an aircraft, something that's launched from a submarine basically needs to emerge from a submarine hatch, swim through many meters of water, and then sort of break the ocean surface. Its rocket motor needs to ignite, and then it needs to travel towards its target. The K-4, which was fired yesterday, has a range of 3,500 kilometers. It wasn't test fired for the first time, but the reason why this is a milestone test, Shashank, is that it was test fired for the first time, like you said, from an operational submarine. The INS Arighaat is India's newest ballistic missile submarine. It was commissioned just a couple of months ago, if I'm not mistaken, and therefore this is a premier weapons test in every respect. You've got a spanking new submarine. You've got this missile that's been waiting for this submarine to enter service, so it can be tested from the platform that is going to carry this missile in the future, and therefore I hear it was a successful test. There's some buzz on social media about why the government hasn't announced it, and I want to tell everyone that I cannot recall a public press release or a government statement on any previous submarine-launched ballistic missile. I may be wrong. There may have been statements about some of the shorter range weapons like the K-15, which is a 750-kilometer weapon. But as far as the K-4 is concerned, which began testing sometime in 2019, 2020, I don't recall any public statement. So I don't think anyone should be surprised that there is no big PIB press release about this, because it is, after all, a sensitive weapon system. It's something that you don't usually talk about very much, but the world knows it exists, and that's usually enough for India. Now, one single test is very important, but obviously it means that there are going to be more tests before it becomes, quote unquote, operational, which means ready for a nuclear strike. One very, very interesting part of this test, Shashank, which I wanted to share with your viewers, is that this missile was apparently tested at its maximum range, which is incredible, because at 3,500 kilometers, if you consider that it was fired from somewhere in the Bay of Bengal, the submarine was situated somewhere in the Bay of Bengal, that would take the missile's trajectory deep into the Indian Ocean. Way down south, way past the Andamans, way past Indonesia, in the southern parts of the Indian Ocean, which means that the test was not just a test of the technology, but also an incredible message to whoever's listening. And believe me, everyone's listening. The Chinese have their own ships in the Indian Ocean,
the research vessels,
watching all these things. You've got the Americans obviously fully clued in, etc. But coming to the nuclear triad and what you were talking about initially, a nuclear triad basically means the trinity of nuclear weapons delivery methods. You've got the land-based nuclear deterrent. In India's case, the land-based nuclear deterrent is comprised of our Agni and Prithvi missiles, which are nuclear capable. They've got ranges anywhere between 150 all the way up to 6,000, 7,000 kilometers. Then you've got the air-based deterrent, which is we were just talking about it. You've got your Sukhoi 30 fighters. You've got your Mirage 2000s, you've got your Jaguars, and you've got your Rafales, the new fighters. These are the four fighters that are capable and cleared, operationally capable of delivering nuclear weapons. And there are two kinds of air-delivered nuclear weapons that I am aware of that India has. One are the nuclear gravity bombs, which are basically sort of dumb, unguided stuff that you just drop on a target. And there are nuclear, air-to-surface missiles of a guided variety. Again, very classified. Nobody knows very much about what exactly India has, but those exist. And the K-4 that was tested yesterday fills that third leg. It has long been considered that India has ticked the boxes very well on the first two legs, land and air, but the sea-based nuclear missile deterrent had taken its time to come, mostly because it is technologically complex, but also because we simply didn't have the platforms. The Arihant came about a decade ago. Now you've got the Arighaat as well.
Right.
But now with the great thing about a successful test is it completely energizes the test program. And I hear that the K4 is not going to be the end of it. There's going to be a K5 as well of an even longer range. So this is very good news.
Right. Could I ask you to talk a little bit about that? Because we've seen a lot of developments. In August, the commissioning of INS Arighaat. Of course, now we've seen this test as well. Could you talk a little bit about that sea leg of this nuclear deterrent in terms of, could you also set the strategic picture for us, like India's development of its nuclear arsenal? We're seeing China undertake a very, very rapid expansion of its nuclear arsenal in the last couple of years. Could you just situate this? Where exactly is India coming from in terms of the development of this nuclear?
So since the 70s, India has had a great deal of clarity on what its nuclear posture is. India has a no first strike policy. Which basically means that India provides a kind of strategic assurance to the world that it will not be the one to initiate a nuclear war, but that it has a second strike capability, which means that if India were to ever come under nuclear attack from any of its adversaries, then India's response would be so devastating, so unsparing, so unforgiving that it would be an existential issue for the country that provoked it. And therefore, having a policy that promises no first use means that you need to have a very credible second strike capability. Because if that first strike destroys all your capabilities, then you've got nothing left to respond with. Therefore, it is considered that in the landscape of nuclear weapons, your sea-based deterrent, like the K4 that we're talking about, is the most survivable. Let's just paint a kind of nightmarish nuclear war scenario where, and I'm of course simplifying this because of time. You've got a situation where an aggressor nation sends nuclear missiles or other kinds of missiles to destroy either your airfields or your aircraft that are capable of firing nuclear missiles. They destroy your missile silos because they are aware of where you're hiding your missiles. The only thing they can't really touch or can't touch easily are your submarine-based nuclear missiles, because those lumbering submarines are stealthily, swimming around somewhere, undisclosed locations, far out in whichever ocean they choose to be in, and they're nuclear powered, which means they can stay submerged literally forever, and therefore that is your most meaningful second strike capability. It means that in an extreme kind of wipeout nuclear scenario where your country has lost its ability to strike back, your nuclear missiles situated in a submarine somewhere are your best chance at that strike. China has a huge number of submarines. It's building many more. It's got intercontinental ballistic missiles. There have been questions for years, Shashank, over the efficacy and quality of Chinese missiles. But as any military planner, any strategic planner will tell you, China cannot be taken lightly. They are past masters in reverse engineering, Russian and other technology. And that's the reason why questions about quality can only go so far and no further. The Americans, the British, the Russians obviously have their own submarine-launched ballistic missiles as well. So with the K4, India enters a kind of, once again enters quite a small club of countries that have mastered the intricate symphony of technologies required to demonstrate these missiles, and not just demonstrate. This was an operational live test,
Right.
So it was not just a technical demonstration. It was a full range test in the Indian Ocean, of an actual missile. Obviously, there was no nuclear warhead, but it was a full scale, artifice of the missile. So as far as the nuclear balance and the nuclear power play in the region is concerned, the nuclear arms race is a bit of a is a bit of a zero-sum game,
Sure.
and it always has been since the Cold War. Which is, and the reason for that is, as nuclear weapons, and I'm talking about the warheads, have become more powerful, it's become a bit of a joke over how many nuclear warheads of that kind does a country really need. There of course is a separate argument saying, but in an actual nuclear war, an Armageddon-like scenario, there will be all kinds of other technologies that will come into play: anti-missile defense, ballistic missile defense, and the capability of engaging incoming nuclear missiles may actually be the game changer. And India does have projects like that also in the works. But the K-4, I think, represents perhaps the most important step forward in terms of nuclear delivery systems.
Right. Let me ask you one last question, because I know that we have to let you go. In terms of challenges, right, moving forward, you said that China, of course, is churning out a lot of submarines. They've really developed advanced technologies when it comes to missiles. But we can inform you that one of the big concerns, if you're a Western planner or any planner anywhere, is that there has been a remarkable step up of the Russia-China partnership when it comes to transferring submarine technology, which is seen as something that the Chinese, and Shiv, correct me if I'm wrong here, that China is seen as somewhat inferior to American submarine technology. They've been working with the Russians to acquire that technology, missiles as well. So my question to you is, in terms of India's development of putting out more, let's say, nuclear capable submarines, in terms of further developing its missile programs, it's also happening on the background of questions about budgets. The naval budget. Of course, the Navy chief came out some time ago and said that India's targets for the ships that it hoped to put out into the sea have to be made more realistic. They're not as realistic as they once were. So could you paint some of the challenges as well for India doing this?
So look, the thing is, while one is usually tempted to mix your nuclear arsenal with your conventional defense arsenal, it's always a mistake to do so. You can't mix the two things, because remember, your strategic weapons program is completely insulated from your bread and butter defense.
Right.
When I say your bread and butter defense, I'm talking about your ships, I'm talking about your conventional submarines, I'm talking about your tanks, your guns, your artillery, all the rest of it, which actually occupies an enormous part of your budget, is your conventional defense. That's your everyday defense. Your strategic weapons program cannot have the same kinds of budgetary constraints. They do have budget. There's no doubt about it. The spreadsheet is the master of all. There's no doubt about it. But the pulls and pressures that weigh on your conventional, recapitalization budget for modernization of defense equipment is not the same as the kind of pressure that sits on those. Because, for instance, India might be able to postpone, procuring, for instance, Shashank, surface-to-air missiles for its ships.
Right.
But it cannot postpone a K-4.
Right.
It cannot, because the K-4 is a missile which, and this is the beautiful irony of nuclear weapons, it's a missile whose success lies in it never having to be used. Right? The great paradox of nuclear weapons is your weapon has failed if you need to push the button on it. Right? So the urgency to get these missiles operational, in the hope that you never need to push the button, is a different kind of it's a different kind of urgency. There's something non-negotiable about nuclear weapons, and you need to get there. India has a matrix of nuclear deterrent readiness, which it has made and updated over the years since the 80s, and I have to say it's actually a really fine policy. It's an excellent, very well considered, very structured kind of policy that war games all kinds of scenarios. We may even do another episode on that, on the different kinds of scenarios in which nuclear weapons may actually come into play. There has been, some political voices have actually talked about, Shashank, revisiting our no first use policy.
Exactly, right.
Manohar Parrikar, the late defense minister, was one famous voice who once wondered out aloud to the alarm of all his colleagues in the government, why do we have a no first use policy? And everybody's like, you can't say that loudly, and in the cabinet and things like that. But there are all these factors that come into play, and I think the great part about India's nuclear submarine program and its nuclear weapons program is that it's hit an amazing rhythm. There haven't been the kinds of alarming delays one usually associates with these kinds of weapons.
Right.
And I think thanks should be given not just to the missile program but also to the space program, the Atomic Energy Commission, BARC, all these agencies which have completely away from the sunlight, worked really hard to put these things together.
Right.
And the K4 is really a result of that.
Right. Shiv, we're going to have to let you go at this point in time, but thank you so much for coming, explaining the importance of the K4 missile. This test that we're seeing, of course, not yet officially confirmed, but of course, Twitter is a buzz and social media will be a buzz, and we wanted to get Shiv in here to tell you a little bit about this missile, tell you about India's nuclear deterrent, and thank you so much as always, Shiv, for joining us.
Thanks,
and thank you so much for joining us here on India Today Global.